Hello, my name's Kendall. I'd like to talk to you about Marvel Comics and talk about some of the things that made them incredibly successful and look at the tips and the processes that Marvel use in their approach to creativity that make them really stand out from the actual crowd. Now, when I say Marvel Comics, almost everyone knows who I'm talking about. If you look at, this is one of the intro graphics that you would see in a lot of the big blockbuster movies that we've seen with Spider-Man, the Hulk, and so on. So it's certainly a well-known brand, and the creator was a gentleman called Stan Lee. Now, I'd like to go back to the beginning when he had this once-in-a-lifetime idea. He dreamt up this concept, this idea of a brand new type of superhero team. So these were heroes with insecurities, with fears and jealousies. They had flaws, and what it did was it made them real human beings. And people could identify with them, even though they were superheroes. They had something that made them, that you could connect with, and they were believable. So this was quite a different approach to actually creating a superhero character, and it was incredibly successful. And I think one of the key things that we could learn from the approach to this first step is that people don't want to buy your idea unless they're actually emotionally connected to it. So you need to look at finding that emotional connection that has meaning to the viewer, to whoever your audience is. Now, some of the first characters he created were the Fantastic Four. This was an incredible success, an absolute massive hit. And shortly after this, naturally his boss wanted more. I mean, this was so successful. Let's use that formula to create new characters. So in a very short period of time, he went on to create some similarly flawed heroes, and these became some of the biggest names ever in comic history. So we're talking about characters like Spider-Man, who was a weak, he had these, he was bullied at school and he was clumsy, and then he was also the Amazing Spider-Man. The Hulk, X-Men, Thor, and so on. The franchise went on. Iron Man. So this became Marvel's greatest triumph, but the amount of work that this actually created nearly sunk the company. Stan and his team just simply couldn't handle the demand for all the new titles and the issues that they faced with this. They needed a lot more content, but they had no system in place to produce that content efficiently. So what saved the day was, instead of giving up, our friendly neighbourhood comic book visionary devised a second once-in-a-lifetime idea. He created a system. So rather than writing the full script for each new issue, which became impossible for him to do everything, instead he started to pull together a 1.5 page outlines where they covered the concept of the story. And what he'd then do is develop a system, and he'd look at leveraging across his organisation. So he'd look at matching the visual talents of a particular designer to a particular concept. And this method, this technique, absolutely saved the day. So he'd locate an artist on staff that he thought was most suited to the work, and there the artist could actually go on to create the entire work. He would only come back to Stan for the final finishing off, where they put the other finishing touches to, and give them outlines for the next stories to actually continue. And this way he was able to replicate and produce massive amounts of content that was of really high quality, but it was really using leverage quite effectively. So eventually this cycle would sort of continue, where he'd get the first one back, add the dialogue bubbles, and send it on to the press. And so this formula worked and worked and worked. Now, Stan Lee's method was so efficient that it allowed Marvel to easily handle the demand of bringing up a whole bunch of new titles. And this credit sparked one of the most creative periods in comic book history. Now the question you might ask though is, how does this actually relate to us today? So why should we care about a comic book publisher in the digital age? Well, almost everyone today needs to look at creating creative content. And so if you want to look at producing that sort of content, no matter what industry you're in, You need a method for being able to produce that. Now, of course, back in the dark ages, before we had the internet, people relied on another form of marketing, which I'm terming interruptive marketing methods, to get people to find out about their products and services. So these were typically things like advertisements, direct mail, cold calling, or door knocking. And since these depended on these sorts of messages, they tolerated them. That was the only thing that was actually around. But now with the internet, interruptive marketing just doesn't work anymore. It's a cause of a lot of resentment in the marketplace. And so that's why a lot of really smart companies have looked at creating a steady stream of content, of blog posts, videos, articles, etc., that broach topics that are potentially of interest to their customer. They have some sort of connection that can help them in their business and improve what they're doing. And the content's that's informative, it's educational and even entertaining, and not thinly disguised as a sales pitch. So this became the new method in which we are communicating now. The old methods don't work anymore. You can't be interruptive in your approach to marketing. You need to be inclusive and educational and engaging, and also fun. Now here's the rub. Coming up with this sort of content is really, really hard. So let's take a leaf out of Stan Lee's book and look at some of the systems that he actually implement. So the good news is that you can lighten your load. You can improve the quality of your content by applying systems in the same process to create content just like Stan Lee did. Now the first step, and I believe this is another one of the really important keys, is doing an inventory of resources. Who do you have within your organisation that could assist you with particular projects? Who would be creating the content? Would it be one or two overworked people in the marketing department, or maybe the owner of the company who has 500 other things to do on any given day? These are some of the problems you're actually presented with, or a well-paid freelance copywriter, but he doesn't know anything about your actual company, or an engineer who might take 8 hours just to come up with a topic, because it's not a fit for what their actual talent is. So it's a matter of aligning the talent along with the tasks, and by doing this you can actually, and thinking smart, you can make everyone's life a lot easier instead of being more difficult. Now, one of the suggestions I would make is to look at what other people are actually doing, and look at content structures that they use, and ones that are working. Now, a great place to actually do this is just to go down to your local supermarket or newsstand and have a look at the magazines that are in your local supermarket. And look at the sort of headlines that they use, the images they use. How do they capture your attention and make you want to open up the magazine and read the article? How do they phrase things? What sort of headlines do they use? Because a lot of these actually use formulas, and when they find a formula that works, they continue to use that over and over again. They're constantly in the business of trying to capture eyeballs, so they're producing dramatic, visually exciting covers, and we can learn a lot of things from these. So, look at the type of headlines, the way they construct the articles. They're sure to be following formulas, so see if you can see what these formulas are and how they might apply to your business. There's no accident, these formulas have been used over and over again because they work, and there's no harm in actually taking ideas from what you find and applying them in another different context. So the first step is to match people with content structures. So to match the most appropriate content structures with the people or your staff that you have that are best suited to handling those structures. So you'd be surprised how an employee's creativity would flourish given the right project. So even if that person isn't a writer, they may handle the architecture of the project and hang their ideas on it, and that's where they actually flourish and where it works. You might still be using a copywriter to actually fine tune or polish, give that sort of beautiful polish to the actual words, but use the appropriate talents and look broader across your organisation. So another recommendation is to look at finally spreading that throughout the organisation to get everybody to contribute a little to what you're actually doing, because believe me, this all adds up to a lot over a period of time. So one of the secret formulas to fame and fortune, as discovered by Stan Lee and the Marvel Comics series, ironically it applies to a systematic process to creative content. It tends to increase the output and innovative ideas rather than inhibiting it. Stan Lee knew this, and he turned out to be on one of the most incredible secrets to fame and fortune, with an amazing formula for producing things that the public actually liked. And of course, that has led to, incredible fame and fortune. Thank you very much.